Yep.
Oh,
All right. Apparently we're live. No, I think it just glitched for a second.
Oh. All right.
I can't tell.
The show's live. What are we live on?
Yeah, no, okay. We're live. We're live on our YouTube.
Okay. All right.
All right. There's already 35 people watching. All right. Hold on, humans. I need to we throw this up on.
Thomas isn't wearing pants, so he's got to figure this out.
That's correct. Rarely do. Yeah, this is wild. All right. Wait for some more people to join, see what happens. But yeah, basically we're going to break down everything that we found out. I just talked to Connor Pardo. Jimmy's been doing the rounds, talking to pretty much everybody in Major League Pickleball. Have you talked to anybody at the PPA?
Yeah, I have actually. I've talked to a couple execs at the PPA. So this will be interesting.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely two sides to it. To what happened, and then two sides to they both have obviously they're both very optimistic about the future. As they should be.
Yeah, right. Well, they both, I mean, you have to be in a moment like this, right?
Yeah.
Like the
you
future of
you definitely can't show that trepidation, right?
Right. Yeah, I got on the I got on the phone with Pardo, and hey, Matty Pickles, I did make my bed. I got on the phone with Pardo, and he was just like laughing, like, you know, this is crazy, like pretending like it was fun. Maybe it is. Maybe this is fun for him, but I know that if I'm in the MLP or the PPA shoes, you know, deep down, I am like, this is war mode, right?
Yeah.
And this is the future of pro pickleball.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we can get into it, but this shift just in the last 24 hours has been wild because it's gone from the MLP owners being pretty pissed at the MLP to now like, holy shit, we're going to pull this off.
Is that's kind of the tone of what you're hearing?
Yeah, that's the tone.
So can you talk a little bit about some of the players? So I guess it's probably worth doing a little bit of a backdrop in terms of what exactly is happening right now, right?
Yeah. So we can start from the beginning. So basically, Connor Pardo came on our podcast, King of the Court, last Sunday. Okay. We recorded a podcast. On that podcast, he talked about MLP and PPA. And one of the questions we asked him, funny enough, was, can the MLP and PPA coexist? Because you were there with me. We're top of Margaritaville, right, in New York. And Steve Kuhn's giving me his vision for PPA or for MLP.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. But he's talking about you live in the city that drafts you.
Right.
These are real teams. These are real franchises. You know, we're signing multi-year contracts. And his vision, while it was amazing, I didn't know where the PPA fit in with that.
Right.
So I brought that up to Connor on our podcast. And Connor actually was like, you know what? It does fit because the PPA, the MLP is great and it's a fun event, but PPA still proves who the best player in the world is. MLP doesn't prove that. And that was kind of his rebuttal. And he was like, you know, there's room for both. And then the funniest part is, and maybe he said this off the record, so I shouldn't say it, but that's okay. He said, we're probably going to have an announcement soon with the MLP. And so it seemed like everything was good. That was Sunday. So then all of a sudden, yesterday, we get a call that says, we're supposed to release our pod yesterday. Yep. We get a call that says, do not release your podcast.
What time did you get that call?
In the morning, early morning,
right.
7, 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And they said, don't release it. We don't want you to release it. There's some stuff happening with MLP.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so our understanding, and you know, you can tell me kind of bits and pieces. Our understanding is Steve Kuhn with MLP went to the board of directors. He got the votes that he needed to essentially cut themselves out of the PPA deal.
Yep.
Because they were doing a merger, obviously.
Yep.
And to offer multi-year contracts to players.
Yep.
The owners weren't aware of this at all.
Right.
In fact, I've talked to several owners. They had no clue. And the reason for that is because Steve didn't want this to leak. He wanted essentially to exactly what happened. I mean, it's like
I mean, Pardo told me he was like, I knew something was up as early as like late last week, just based on the lack of communication and where they were in the deal.
Yeah.
And so he was ready for shit to hit the fan.
Yeah.
And he was just kind of waiting for that moment.
Yeah. And that makes sense, because when I talked to Pardo, he was like, dude, we have the schedule ready. I'm just waiting for to be able to release it.
Right.
And what's crazy about that is this was like a true merger. They were going to play MLP events on PPA tour stops.
Right. But that was something that was sort of like, that was set to be released. That was like the final things that they were negotiating.
Yes, exactly.
And the contract was supposed to be signed, or was supposed to be given like as soon as, I think it was like 15 days ago or something like that. Like it was supposed to be done. But then all of a sudden, lawyers are involved. It's getting pushed back. There's a lack of communication. There's stall after stall.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently there's infighting within MLP, right? Some of the owners want to do this, some don't.
Yeah.
Steve Kuhn obviously wants to kind of go his own way and sort of depart from these negotiations and say,
people were actually resigned.
Yep, that's what I heard as well. But then apparently those people are still involved.
Those people are actually making calls to players, which is wild. But
all right, so let me read through like this bulleted list.
Okay, let's do it.
And then we can expand from there. So this is a blog we just wrote, and this was before I talked to Connor this morning. But this is just sort of a recap of like the latest, right? So obviously the big news yesterday, gambling is in pickleball. I mean, you could literally bet on like Loong versus Rafa. And like the headlines, like you could actually make bets, right? So everybody's like, whoa, gambling's in pickleball. That's the big news. At the same time that's happening, Kuhn and MLP owners are actively at like 7 a.m. yesterday calling every top player, offering them 6-figure multi-year guaranteed contracts, exclusive. And it basically tips off to PPA, and all of a sudden PPA springs into action. Every single pro player, their phone's blowing up, they're getting offers, and it becomes a talent race. It's like a land grab, right?
Yeah, literally it was an arms race, right? Yeah.
Let's see. So certain players I heard have 7-figure offers. We can talk about that if we want to. We could pretty much all guess like who those players would be.
So I mean, I'll say it right now. I'll say that the face of MLP as of right now, it sounds like from everything I heard is going to be Tyson McGuffin.
Yep.
That's who they're going to build their brand around.
7-figure deal.
7-figure deal.
Guaranteed money.
Guaranteed, plus like millions in prize money, like yearly. And we're not talking like a million. We're talking, 3, 4, 5 million in prize money every single year.
If his team wins.
Yes.
You're just saying like everybody is.
I'm just saying that MLP is also offering that prize money on top of the guaranteed deals.
Yeah. And for perspective, remember when, MLP and PPA, it was like the first time they were really butting heads, and MLP goes $100,000 to the winner of this next event. And we were like, whoa, this is crazy,
exactly.
Right? It's like, what's the PPA going to do?
Yeah.
Look where we are now.
And now we're looking at literally for $5 million in prize money in a year.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just keep reading through this to make sure we like cover the bases here. But like around like probably like mid morning to afternoon, MLP announces multi-year contracts. So they just like put up like a blog, which I didn't really understand like the purpose of that.
Well, originally they sent an email to the players, just to the players before they announced it publicly, because I really think that this is MLP trying to get out in front of every counterattack that the PPA was going to issue, because what Connor did was he started making calls. And Connor's words to the players were, I will beat anything that MLP is offering you.
Right.
He literally, I mean, I know direct quote, he said, if they give you 200, I'll give you 250.
Right.
and which makes sense, right? You've got to save your product at this point.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, in the end, Thomas, I mean, who wins? The players win.
Yeah. They get to sit back. Unless, but I don't see this happening. Like, unless the talent fragments enough that like the product just suffers too
So
much.
that's the biggest issue. I think the fans lose because now, like you said, the talent is diluted on both
Yeah,
sides.
but I still like watching APPs, right? And
Yeah,
seeing like who the up and comers are, sort of
sure.
the less established talent. Like as
Yeah,
long as it's good pickleball, I
yeah.
enjoy that. But that's not made for like ESPN.
No.
It's not made for gambling,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um,
for sure. But I did just talk to an owner, and so the rumors are that Ben and Annalie are staying with PPA,
which you would assume.
which you would assume, right? Um, I just talked to an MLP owner, and he said, think about the fact that these MLP events don't have Ben and Annalie. He's like, obviously they're the best players in the world, but now you don't have them. Think about how wide open these events are going to be. Like, think about how the competition, like, it's anybody's game now,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what MLP is selling.
So assuming this, by the way, Pardo said on the phone, he goes, I'm still hoping MLP comes back around and we sign the original deal we negotiated.
Yeah,
Now, I don't know if Connor's saying that as sort of like PR or he
yeah,
actually would entertain that even happening at this point. In my
yeah.
mind, no shot Dundon and Kuhn come together.
No, I mean, I couldn't imagine it. I mean, I think that Kuhn feels like he's got a leg up on Connor right now, because I mean, the reality is the players that we're hearing rumored to MLP. I mean, you have Ben and Annalie at PPA, and then literally everybody else.
If there's no one to challenge, I mean, first of all, Ben and Annalie are barely challenged at all right now.
Yeah,
But if nobody even comes close, that's going to get pretty repetitive.
yeah,
Right.
for sure. I
That's
mean, it
not going to
already
be that
is,
fun to
right?
watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that as MLP says, okay, now we're out on our own, we got to survive, they introduce some more like traditional tour style events?
Yeah.
I would
So
assume they would do that. Like
I
that.
think that they would. I think that they would have to. They are one thing that they're promoting as an off season for the players.
Right.
So they want it to be like,
Time off. True time off.
yeah, time off. The number I heard is 180 to 200 days of play, events, play, etc., and then 160 days off. Where PPA was gonna, they were telling the players they were going 40 events this year. They were going to up it to 40, and the player, I mean, it's a grind, right? I mean, I know Tyler and Zane have talked about it. It's a grind.
Yeah.
That much travel and all that. So that's appealing for the MLP.
Right. So here's some information from Pardo. So part of these contracts is it's like 140 days of work, 401k, comped travel, and health insurance, right? Which apparently is like all new. I can't believe there wasn't like
right.
health insurance.
He's like, fine.
Comp travel
Snacks at the venue.
Yeah, wild. Here's a Hertz car.
Yeah.
But the PPA is essentially just matching that, right? So they're saying health insurance, comp travel, 20 tour events, and then 6 team events. So for 26 total events, that would be the PPA deal. So if it's not obvious, Vibe is absolutely coming back.
Yes.
Pardo was like, oh, Cuban's pumped. He's back in the mix. He didn't want to do the MLP deal in the first place, and he sort of was discouraged by that. But now that we're back in, an all-out war, Cuban is like, all right, I'm in. Like, what do we need to do?
Yeah.
Which is super interesting. But like, one of the things that Dundon is doing and Pardo is doing is they're going to MLP owners, and they're essentially saying, divest from your team, however you need to do that, whether that's through legal means or otherwise. You just take the L. I assume none of them would do that. And put up some cash and buy a Vibe pickleball team.
Yeah.
So they're actively trying to recruit MLP owners.
They are. So I talked to a couple owners, several actually, and they mentioned this. And it does seem like that yesterday morning that was a viable option. Okay. I think that was very viable. I think a lot of these owners felt, blindsided by Steve Kuhn a little bit. But then by the afternoon, once they saw the vision and everything kind of started to come into play, and they realized that, holy shit, Steve, like we can pull this off.
Right.
They backed. Not only did they back Steve, they got him. They started getting on the phones.
Right. Well, they believe in this vision, assuming everything falls into place.
Exactly.
The reason they don't believe in making an aggressive move as of like yesterday morning is because of the risk, because of the downside. But as dominoes start to fall the way of the MLP, then the owners are going to rally around. Plus, it's wartime. I mean, like you have to come together, even if you don't agree with the general's decision. Like now you got to fight because
exactly. You can't sit on the fence. Exactly, and that's kind of what they've been doing. And so, I mean, I know team owners, they're reaching out to players, they're calling agents, they're calling everybody that they can, using every relationship possible.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Top Notch thing, because I think that's pretty damn interesting, right? It sounds like Top Notch and MLP, at least some of the MLP team, had been having conversations.
Yeah.
And Top Notch plays a huge role in this.
So we know Sam Flaxman was the PPA liaison.
Right.
Sam left the PPA and went and started working for Top Notch.
Yep. And let's read through the Top Notch players really quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got Tyson McGuffin, Zane Navratil, James Ignatowicz, Anna Bright, Jesse Irvin, Stocksrud, I always butcher his first name, Althoff Merchant, AJ Kohler, Irina Terashenko, Connor Garnett, Jill Braverman, Andre Daescu, Travis Rettenmeyer, Alex Newman, Brendan Long, and there's more, I assume, but these are just like the photos.
Yeah. I know Tyra Black is Top Notch.
Yeah, right. They've
Elise
signed
Jones
people recently.
Yeah, Elise Jones is Top Notch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, and I don't know if this is, I've heard this from several different people, and obviously, I don't know, but it sounds like Top Notch essentially cut a deal with the MLP, and they said, we can get you our clients.
Yep.
We want you to build around our clients. And I don't know if there's any sort of kickback from Top Notch or whatnot, right? But the reality is, in the end of the day, they're getting their clients more money, more stability, 3-year contracts. And every single Top Notch client, I was told, is headed to MLP except for one player is on the fence.
Yeah, who would that be? Let me see. Let me take a guess.
Okay, you guess.
Jesse.
No.
Irina?
I think Irina's got to go MLP. I mean, she's
that's
MLP
what I was thinking, but like,
think Jesse's partner.
Which men's or women's?
Men's mixed.
Riley?
AJ.
I
was told AJ's on the fence. He's undecided. He's still a free agent. The players I've heard that are still free agents are J-Dub, Dylan, AJ, Lung, Vivian Glassman. There's a couple players out there that are still kind of free agents. Hayden hasn't signed yet. And then there's players, obviously Ben and Annalie are team PPA. And then there's players that have already signed with MLP. They signed late last night or are expected to sign today.
Right.
But Connor is on site today in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
And so my expectation is that Connor he's going to try and obviously convince a lot of players to stay.
Yeah, right. Well, that was one of the things I thought. It was like, it's an interesting timing when they have all the players in Kansas City, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Connor can literally walk up to him and get in their face.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that he's going to intimidate them, but when you're face to face,
exactly, it's a lot easier.
Dynamic, absolutely.
Yeah. Although someone did say Brooks was in Kansas City, I don't know if that's true. If he was, that's the most savage move ever.
Yeah, it's very savage. He called me this morning, and I tried to call him back, but he was out. I was on the phone with Pardo.
Okay.
So I haven't talked to him yet.
Yeah. So I mean, I think here's the thing. The fans like MLP better than PPA.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I don't know. I think they both have their value, right? Like I like watching. I like trying to figure out who's the best player in the world, who's the best individual, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I
and
think the
that
two.
was
I think
Connor's pitch to us on why PPA and MLP can coexist, because PPA
yeah,
proves who the best player in the world is.
right. Do you want a PGA Tour or do you want an NFL?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's
But
interesting
now,
because
they're both going to try and do both.
yeah, because now you have vibe, right?
Yeah,
But
and
do
I
we get
assume
to
MLP is going to do tour events. Why wouldn't they?
yeah, I mean, I think they would have to, but do you get two diluted products? That's the question. You know?
I mean, you definitely do to a degree, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of comments
Yeah.
coming in here. I can't even really keep it up. But yeah, Top Notch, if you're not familiar, is just like an agent that represents a bunch of the top players. Somebody was
Yeah,
asking me.
exactly.
What else? What else interesting have you heard?
Yeah.
Just
So I
going
mean,
through so many notes.
yeah, I mean, I think that it's, I think most of this stuff is stuff that people have kind of pieced together. Um, I don't know. I don't know what exactly, will come from it, but I do think that, I think in the end, I think that the PPA is still going to be there. I think the MLP is still going to be there, right?
Yeah, yeah, they'll both exist for some time.
And they'll both exist, and then we'll kind of see what happens.
One thing though, I think creating odds for Major League Pickleball matches is going to be very challenging, and I would be interested to see how much progress they've made, like for sports betting.
Yeah.
With the PPA Tour, they have everything in place. To me, I think of gambling as a massive value add. You bring in this whole new audience. You bring in way more personal investment. I mean, people are putting capital, their own money on the outcome of these matches. They're just going to care more, right? Like to
Yeah.
me, gambling is actually pretty crucial and could be a leg up if only the PPA is able to facilitate it.
Yeah, I think so. And it brings in a different audience, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
for sure. I mean,
Like a bunch of college kids, like
yeah,
the next gen,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and all the degenerates.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
exactly, right.
Did you gamble
And
on any events
no, no,
yesterday?
no, because I could, because I'm in Texas, so I
Oh
tried to
yeah.
use
See, we can't either. Yeah,
I tried to use a VPN, and they apparently I'm not the first person to use a VPN because
yeah.
they
They know.
forwarded that pretty quickly.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
was
I
able to
heard
like
about
get in
it.
there and see I was able to see the lines and stuff,
Yeah, yeah. I
but
mean,
I
and
couldn't make a
it's
bet.
awesome, right? I mean, I think it's interesting. I know like a couple people that bet on the Jay DeVilliers Lohani match, and it was like -6.5, and it ends up going 3 games, and then all of a sudden it starts getting super intense because
Yeah.
like you want like Onik wins, he wins game 2, and you're super pumped about it because you're like, okay, but then you're like, wait, if he gets blown out in game 3, that actually screws me.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it fun. Like every
Oh,
point
for
matters.
sure, for sure. Yeah, and
So
then when there is gambling, then you have all the sports books coming in. They're able to write big checks,
yeah,
and it just opens up a whole new revenue stream.
yeah,
And then you can
yeah,
take that capital and invest it elsewhere.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But so one of the interesting things was like, okay, so when Vibe and the PPA merged, right? Or sorry, Vibe and MLP merged, right?
Yeah,
Um, what really happened with that deal was that Tom Dundon and Connor Pardo now own 20% of all of Major League Pickleball.
okay,
They each get their own individual teams. So the Utah Black Diamonds and the Seattle Pioneers, who finally made an Instagram.
yes,
Good job, Seattle. But now you don't need it
yeah,
because you're not a team anymore. I think. I mean, I'm not sure how that plays out.
yeah.
And then they're able to also contribute 4 teams to Major League Pickleball, which they did. Then we expanded to 24 teams.
Do we know what
More
teams those
investors.
are?
No, I couldn't think off the top of my
Okay.
head. But so my question now is like, okay, so that 20% ownership in MLP now doesn't exist, right? So that actually just by, essentially it's like, okay, the talent was diluted. So now the value of every MLP team in theory is less. You could argue that.
Yeah.
But 20% that was spoken for from an outside party is no longer spoken for, right? And you have that extra capacity.
Yeah.
The value of every share to all the other owners just immediately increased.
Increases, yeah.
What happens to the Seattle Pioneers? What happens to the Utah Black Diamonds? Who assumes ownership of those teams? They're going to have to.
My question is, truthfully, is I think it depends on how many players the MLP can actually sign. I mean, if the MLP doesn't sign enough players, it's probably easy to contract those teams.
Yeah, how do you do 24 teams? You're gonna have to contract them. But like you look at like the Texas Rangers, they have like 30 owners.
Yeah.
Like how are you going to consolidate some of these teams? There's already so much ownership. Like,
yeah, for sure. I know. And I mean, I've heard that, we're talking like $10 million evaluations on these teams now. Which is, yeah.
Now you wonder.
I mean, yeah, it's wild. I don't know. I don't know what the game plan is for MLP. I don't know exactly what their I guess end game is or what they're planning to do with ownership and things like that. But I think right now, they're hoping that let's get as many players as possible and everything else will follow.
Yeah.
Because, the players want to play with, like if 30 players go to MLP and then you have Ben Annally and a couple other players going to PPA, right? If you're a player, where are you going? I mean, I would say that you're probably going to go, to MLP just in the sense that like it seems more secure, I guess.
Yeah, guaranteed money. Clear off time.
Yeah, exactly. Health insurance, 401k.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a good good finance job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You play pickleball.
Well, you play pickleball. Like, do you think these players I mean, we'll have to ask Zane and Tyler, but I mean, they've been in the game for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you think they ever imagined this, playing pickleball?
Absolutely not.
I talked to a player last night and they were like, I can't even believe this. I can't even believe that this is the amount of money I'm about to make playing pickleball.
Oh, that? Yeah. No, that part would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. And I still think the barrier to entry relative to any other sport or even like a profession generally, like to get to a point where you could potentially get a 3-year guaranteed $200,000 a year health insurance, 401k, comp travel, 120 days off. Like that's pretty nice living, and you play a game.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. I mean, it's not bad. I think, I don't know. I mean, I hope that they can both coexist, and I hope, truthfully, part of me does hope that they, like you said, Connor mentioned that he hopes that the MLP signs that original deal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hope that obviously comes into play just for the good of the sport. But I mean, I think this is exciting for the players. I think it's stressful and there's a lot of uncertainty, but I also think they're never getting this amount of money had this not happened.
Someone's knocking on my door. So the GM for the Texas Rangers lives like on the other side of the wall. So I was like, I wonder if he's coming over to just like jump on the pot because we were just talking about that.
That's funny. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, dude, what do you think about, I mean, because you've seen contract, you've seen these players were making like a couple $1,000 appearance fees, for events. And then like the top draft, we know the top pick in MLP, right? We know it was $8,000 for the number one pick and then $8,000 match appearance fee. So Ben Johns was making $16,000 for MLP per event plus prize money. I mean, they've blown that out of the water.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that Ben is always just like, yeah, I don't care. I'm with the PPA.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like doesn't even like entertain an alternative.
No. And I think that they've taken really good care of him. So I get it. I
Right.
get that loyalty.
Right.
You know,
Right. Right.
and I think we're going to see that from other players. I mean, yeah, I think we're going to see it from a lot of players. I mean, we may see some flop, but I don't think anybody's going to be surprised.
Yeah. I mean, depending on which ones you talk to, like some players are so pro PPA and MLP is just like this side thing. And they're like, whatever, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And then you talk to other players who are completely vice versa. They're like, screw the PPA. We're team MLP till we die.
Dude, Matt and Lucy opted out of MLP.
Right. They're just like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what their plans are, but I can't imagine they're going MLP when they didn't even want to play it.
Yeah. But like, you know, somebody like a Matt Wright who's like a very successful lawyer.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You know, that MLP deal simply does not entice him. Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But then there's other players that are like, gosh, the grind, the day to day.
Yeah. Like Schneeman just gave up her job as an engineer. Like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, or think about like, and I don't know what she's doing, but think about like a Callie Smith who's got 3 kids at home, or Elise Jones, they've got kids at home, right? And now you have an off season. Now you have, I mean, Elise was a teacher,
right?
You know, before this, there's no way she was making the type of money she's about to make,
right? Well,
and so
who do we know where she's?
Well, I don't know where she's going, but she is top notch. So I would assume she's going to end up in the MLP.
What about Callie? And you know anything about Callie?
I have not heard anything about Callie at all. I do know though that Connor Pardo, I mean, he's from Utah.
Yep.
And so I think I wouldn't surprise me if some of these Utah players were very loyal to him, just because they've had that relationship with him for so long.
And they've been traveling around the country for years.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Like I mean, I know Tyler and Connor Pardo are good friends. Like they're very close friends, you know.
But I've always thought of Tyler. Yeah, you know, Tyler has always been like a PPA guy through and through.
Yeah.
But I also see him as somebody who is in favor of MLP and kind of tied into a lot of the owners there, right?
For sure. He's got relationships on both sides, for sure.
Do we know anything about him and where he's gone?
No, I don't know anything about him. I know that he talked to the PPA last night, and I know that he talked to MLP wanted to talk to him today. I don't know if he's actually talked to MLP yet. So yeah, I don't think that he's made a decision one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
The numbers I heard from the PPA are pretty impressive too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like the PPA is saying, you know, we're take it or leave it. We're not changing anything. They're throwing out big numbers too. They're trying to match and beat these MLP offers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the PPA is trying to keep.
Yeah. One of the interesting things Connor said was like he basically conceded that they're gonna lose some talent in this.
Yeah.
And he was saying that this is essentially, I mean, this is deliberate, right? Like this was thought through, this was planned out.
For sure.
You know, like like in my mind, like I think a lot of this is going to go to court. Like there are going to be a lot of legal battles between all sorts of different people, right?
Well,
like,
and even contracts, right? Because I was told that some players like Tyson and them have legacy contracts that they signed.
Right. But they would really only have like a year left on those. Yeah. One of the things I said to Pardo, I was like, is there a provision in the PPA agreements where they could buy out the rest of their contract, or they could have a sponsor buy out the rest of the contract? And he said no. And I was like, okay, well, is there any way they could wiggle out of those PPA contracts if they want to go MLP? And he's like, well, realistically, you can wiggle out of anything if you get the right legal team around you.
So that's interesting, because I was told that MLP, that the players have to buy out their liabilities, and that some of the liability buyouts are up to 4x, and that the MLP was going to pay those.
Say that again.
So I was told that some of the players to get out of PPA deals have to buy out their liabilities, and it's up to 4x with some of these contracts, and the MLP was going to pay those.
But that to me just sounds like conjecture. I don't know how you would come up with that. Like,
yeah,
that's probably a theory that MLP owners have.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, dude, it's not over.
No.
It's going to get tied up, like you said. It's going to get tied up at some point. And what's going to happen is, I mean, Thomas, we got billionaires fighting.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
well, on one side we have, on both sides we have multiple.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And so now it just becomes, can they come to some sort of agreement on this?
Yeah. It's just to me, it's a bummer that, like, okay, well, we could potentially, like, never see some of these players face each other again.
No, I know. We have a men's singles final on Sunday that this might be the last time we ever see it.
Right.
And here's the question. Do we see people pull out this week?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question.
Like, do you sign with MLP and then you pull out and you're not playing?
Or does Pardo walk up to you and say, you're not finishing this tournament?
Or does Pardo walk up and say, you're out?
Right.
And what's the next PPA? They're in Kansas City, and then it's what?
I don't think they would, because then Fleming has to do some sort of dance to smooth it over as to why the finals just changed or something, right?
That's true. And honestly, with Amazon, I'm sure that they have commitments to their TV partners and whatever else. But what about next week or the next tournament, right? I mean, I think this does a couple things. I think MLP Atlanta is dead. I think if you're making plans to go to MLP Atlanta, you might want to change them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because Pardo's not going to let any PPA players go. It's going to change every team. MLP is going to have to redraft.
Yep.
So I think that's dead. And then I think that the next PPA event is going to be wildly different.
That whole first season, the whole trial season.
Yeah, that whole first season's done. I think this whole MLP thing, there's rumors that they might try to get a event in before the end of the year, the MLP. But I don't know how they're going to do that. But yeah, they're going to have to redraft. The whole first season is essentially done, and then they're going to start in 2024.
Yep. Yeah, from scratch. And there's going to be a new number of teams.
Yeah, new number of teams. They're going to have
talent pools completely different now.
Because my Black Bears were money. I'm gonna claim a championship.
What's Hayshay gonna do?
I don't know. I mean, she's gonna hitch her wagon to whoever.
I haven't heard from her yet. I'm a little worried that maybe she had a heart attack.
I think that she was on tilt yesterday. I think that she was struggling. Absolutely struggling. Had to pop a couple Xanax to make it through the day.
Yeah, the most chaotic day of her life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what a crazy day for pickleball.
Yeah, it's so wild. But I always said this, we've had multiple instances like this where you're like, well, things can't get crazier than this.
Yeah.
And yet they do.
They do every time. I know.
They do every time.
Yeah.
So the same thing I said last time, I'm going to say right now. Do you think 6 months from now, there's going to be another blow up and another moment like this where shit hits the fan and we got to jump on a live pod?
Dude, 100%. And I think that there's going to be, not only do I think there will, but I think that there's going to be at some point down the line, 6 months, 9 months, whatever that is, I think we see a merger.
I think so. I think I could imagine certain people being pushed out.
Yeah.
Cooler heads prevailing.
Yeah.
And everybody coming back.
Does Connor Pardo step down so that he could save the PPA?
Would he be like,
if MLP said, hey, we will merge, let's get this going again, but Connor, you got to step down.
So I hear the opposite. I hear that MLP wants Dundon out and Pardo to stick around.
Yeah, I can see that too.
Right.
Yeah. Because Dundon and Kuhn aren't friends.
No. Yeah.
They're not even. Yeah.
They've both called me and told me as much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody had a good question. Yeah. Okay. So who's going to care about Major League Pickleball? when there's so much like off season essentially, and then the PPA is consistently having their tournaments, right? I mean, we feel that now, where we like forget about MLP almost between events because everybody turns toward the PPA.
We do, but just to be clear, MLP is not just going to do the 6 events. These contracts are stating 200 days.
Wait, so talk about a little bit about what you said about, Tyler's got to move to like Brooklyn, right? Like these players got to move to their respective cities.
I think that was I think that was the goal of one of Steve Kuhn's ideas. I don't know if that's actually coming to fruition like 2024. Right. But his idea was that you live in the city that you play in.
Yep.
That these owners have to commit to facilities. They have to commit to home arenas or home, and he wanted to do like home and away matches.
Yep. Which I think that'd be really cool. Yeah. I just think that viewership is not at a place where you can fund all of that.
No, because then you have local TV deals, right? That you have to secure yourself and all these things. And I think that that's a little bit a ways off, but this is a step in that direction. I don't know. Steve Kuhn clearly moves fast. His words to me, his direct quote to me was he wanted that by 2025. So this season may be a little bit different, but dude, here's what's wild. Bro, this is the most important draft. When they redraft this is going to be the most important draft in MLP history because this 3-year deals. If you screw this up, if you go and draft a team that doesn't mesh well, or maybe you pick somebody that's on the downside of their career.
Well, that was the case anyway.
It was, but this one's different because you get them for 3 months, right? Like now you truly draft upside.
Yeah, right. Like this upcoming draft,
yeah,
like Jan 5 or whenever they decide to do it, determines your roster for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. So, bro, like a Tyra Black, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you think Tyra Black is the future and you think that she's going to blow up, which obviously she's done,
yeah,
right? I mean, her value is skyrocketing because you get her for 3 years.
Yep.
2, 3, however many years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's huge. I think we see more trades, obviously, now. I think we see there's got to be some sort of waiver wire type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's going to be wild, but like, so then say a Matt Wright, just for instance, okay? Not that Matt's still not at the peak of his career, or maybe a Travis Rettenmeyer. You got these guys in their mid-40s. Are you like, okay, do I take this guy? How's he going to be in 3 years?
Yeah.
I think you draft differently now, and it changes your strategy. Where before you had him for 3 months, you had him for 3 events.
Yeah. But that's not different than what it would have been had this not all blown up.
No, I agree. But now you're paying them a lot of freaking money.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit more pressure there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it wouldn't have been, because this was the plan all along, right? Is to have your team set in stone, no more drafting. I just don't know how you fill 24 teams.
So I'm seeing, interesting, I'm getting some text right now. We just said it's like the buyouts are a theory, right?
Yeah.
And this person said, it's not a theory. There are buyouts. Then he said, it's not going to be a draft. It's free agency.
Oh. Okay.
So what does that mean? So you just go and it becomes a spending war? Like amongst the MLP owners, it's like who can just go buy the best talent?
Yeah. I mean, dude, that would be insane, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be like, but then so you know what? I mean, I guess if their contracts are already set in stone, maybe it's not a spending war, but maybe it's like
there will be a salary min and max, right? So you're capped.
Yeah. And so maybe
within that, right?
But maybe it's who you want to play for. And that makes, bro, you know what that does is that makes GMs and owners that have relationships with players that much more important.
English Premier League model is what I'm getting.
Yeah.
The relegation and promotion.
Yeah, we know there's going to be relegation and all of that. But can you imagine? Like,
my phone right now, I'm looking at my messages and it's just like a bunch of names and just typing. Like it's the typing thing.
Yeah. Oh no, I gotta I'll tell you after. I got a pretty funny message during this.
This is interesting though. No, so like as a player, right? Like you're not going to go to a city you don't want to, because it's up to you whether you accept the contract that's offered to you.
Yeah,
within that min and max.
Yeah, but there's like
a lot of variables.
But there's like certain owners, right? There's some really good MLP owners, and then like we know that like Seattle didn't even have an Instagram page, right?
Yeah,
and like I know that like the fives were getting put up in the Waldorf Astoria and San Clemente, and Pioneers.
We're
paying for everything.
Teams were just like living like kings, and then others were like, I don't even know I've never met my owner.
Exactly, and like I remember Brene Brown, 2 seasons ago was sending her team literally Lululemon every single day, like new clothes, and then the Pioneers couldn't even get jerseys, right?
Speaking of Lululemon, what do you think? Oh, I guess she's Aloe. What do you think Paris Todd's going to do?
Well, I think Paris has got to be an MLP person. Paris can keep her team intact because none of them are PPA.
Yeah.
Other than Pablo. But is he even a gold card?
Is Pablo top notch guy?
Yeah. Well, Fed is, so I assume Pablo is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you just look at the top notch roster, right? Like that to me is enough talent to anchor.
Yeah, for sure.
A good product.
Yeah. Bro, if Top Notch is getting a percentage of this, which is the rumor, I mean, props to them. Like they pulled off a freaking coup. Like this is it's pretty impressive. Right? I mean, yeah, it's huge. But think about, dude, Paris, Hunter, Simone, right? You could keep your team intact. All 3 of them have to go MLP.
So Pablo's not top notch.
Oh, he's not? Okay.
No. This is good though. If you are listening to this and you're like an owner, player, whatever,
reach out.
Send me a text. So I'm getting these updates live, and it's pretty it's pretty interesting. I'm seeing like it's basically like sink or swim for owners. The best owners will get rewarded. Those who are willing to spend and put the time in, take care of the players.
So that was one thing that Steve said to me was he said that, look, these owners, we are asking for a big commitment out of these owners,
Right.
But here's what I heard, bro. Here's something interesting. Some of these owners are strapped and they have no working capital. And so now some of them are pretty, this is going to require full-time GMs, right? Full-time coaches
who know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And here's the difference. So like a GM should not only know talent, they should not only be like somebody with Twitter fingers.
Yeah.
They should be able to essentially run a small business.
This feels like a direct attack.
I was going to say, no offense.
It feels like a personal
attack. A true GM should not only have a very intimate understanding of talent and everything that's happening, but they should be able to run a small business.
It's definitely changing the game for sure. I mean, obviously myself, I'm an assistant to the assistant, but no, I'm an assistant GM. But like, I mean, not to take anything away from a guy like Josh Gartman, who I think is great and he knows talent and he follows the sport. But is Josh Gartman going to be the guy now for another MLP team?
Right.
I don't know. I'm not saying he's not qualified. But where are they going to come get these guys?
Right. So these people who were GMs are just going to be advisors, right? Talent advisors, talent scouts.
I mean, that would be my guess. Is some of them just become scouts, and I think we see bigger staffs for these teams. And I think you see more hands-on from the owners. I mean, we know some of these owners are crazy hands-on, and they've created great relationships with these players. But
shout out to Matt Klitsch. I mean, I don't know. He's in finance. He's all over. He's all over.
Matty
Twitter.
Pickles.
I think he might be a pretty optimal GM. You're welcome, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, obviously Matt is this, he would be the second best Matt as a GM behind Manasseh, but
One thing I was thinking about though, um, is how about Tim Klitsch? I mean, talk about a W, right?
yeah, I
You
mean,
buy
Tim,
in at like 200 grand or whatever, then you sell majority, you cash out, and then this all hits the
yeah,
fan, and you're like, all right, cool.
yeah,
Still have a
Tim Klitsch
small
hit a
bet
home
in
run.
case there's
Yeah,
upside, but I already made a cool few mil.
yeah. I mean, Klitsch hit a home run. I mean, I just, like I said, I just saw somebody offered, or Pardo was offered. He told me this. He was offered like 700,000 for 10%, and he turned it down
Of MLP.
of his team, because they think that they think these teams are worth
Well, it's a
more than
$7 million valuation
yeah,
for an
and they think
individual
these
team.
teams are worth more than that.
Right.
So, I mean, if you bought in at the beginning, if you're Tim Klitsch, if you're, Richie Twazon, if you're, any of these guys that bought in the beginning for what? I mean, what didn't Rettenmeyer and his buddies buying for 250,000 or something?
Yeah, my understanding was that the initial owners, which you just named some of them, it was 200 grand for a team.
Yeah, you buy in at that. I mean, you're feeling great, And at this point, if MLP is investing, I mean, dude, we got to be talking like 25 to 30 million dollars a season right now, if you count salaries and everything else.
Yeah,
Maybe more.
Both entities are like lighting money on fire. But
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
that's what you have to do when you're in growth mode.
Yes, exactly.
Right? You're spending for the future.
Yeah.
You're in the red in the hopes that you create something that is a cash cow down the road.
Yeah.
And you can make up for that and more, right?
Exactly. And so I think that these owners, I mean, gosh, who knows if they're ever going to get revenue sharing out of this. I mean, they got MLP's going to be making $50-100 million a year, but the valuations of their teams are just going to keep going up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I mean, and I think this will allow them to get bigger TV contracts. It's going to allow them to get bigger sponsorships. I mean, in the end, like, other than the diluted product, it's a great day for pickleball. It legitimizes the sport.
I think. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I just think there's a big question mark on all of it. I do. I mean, both entities.
Yeah.
What really
are you team PPA or MLP? Pick a side, Thomas.
It depends on who I talked to most recently.
Dude, that's how I am. That's funny because I have totally see both sides of it.
Right. Well, that's why I texted Connor this morning and I was like, yo, I've literally only heard from players and mostly like people who are team MLP. Like, I need your opinion here. So I'm not like totally lopsided when we go live.
Yeah.
So he called me. Cause they, and it's not like they're both just trying to spin it. Like, they both believe in their own visions. And honestly, they have to right now.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. And I don't think that either vision is wrong. They're just different. Right. And Connor sees the tennis model.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a model that's worked for tennis. And, he's followed it for pickleball and it's worked for him. And that's a model that a lot of people love. Obviously, the PPA is very successful. And MLP sees the team model, the sports franchise model. And so, it's I don't know. I'm curious how it ends up playing out. I think it's exciting. I think the next 3 months are going to be crazy.
Wild.
Yeah. Well, I just don't know who's going to play in PPA events, because the contracts go both ways too, right? Some of these players are trying to buy out of their contracts, but the PPA, they're also, PPA has obligations to them as well. And so if a contract runs through the end of this year and a player is planning to go to MLP, does Connor just say, go now? And now, do we have players that are going 4 months without getting paid? Right? Like, is that going to be made up by the MLP? Is the MLP going to pay out of these next 4 months? Because, dude, I think some of these players are fine, but there's some of these players that probably can't afford that. And they may stay with PPA just for that reason.
Right.
You know, because if you don't play an event until January, where you could be playing, 8 events between now and then, they may need that money. I don't know. Or PPA becomes like APP and you get a couple stragglers who, you get the Deescus who want to, they know that their floor is silver. And you go slay it. So
Yeah. So one of the crazy numbers that Pardo threw out there is there's 300 MLP owners.
Dude, that is nuts.
That's so many. How do you deal with that? In the midst of all this, how do you deal with hearing from 300 owners? Even if a third of those owners are reaching out and like actually active and care. I mean, that's a lot of different voices to manage and navigate. And again, I've said this before, but like these aren't nobodies. These are people who have built businesses.
Yeah.
They're famous in their own right? Like they're alphas, they're A players. They're going to want their voice heard. They're not just going to sit on the sidelines, right? Like these are pretty intense personalities. Are you getting any interesting texts?
No, I mean, I'll have to tell you later. I got a funny one that was like that wasn't very complimentary of what we're doing right now. But
why?
Well, I just said that we're revealing some stuff we shouldn't be revealing. But everything I've said, I've been given the okay to say. Yeah, but I know that, and that's what my response was, that you've talked to Connor.
Yeah, right. I mean, Connor was like, I want this stuff on the record.
Yeah, for sure. And I get it. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. I think we're going to see both sides. And look, what do they say, right? The truth is going to be somewhere in the middle. And Connor's going to have his view on what happened, and Steve Kuhn and the MLP is going to have their view on what happened. And I think they both could be right, just with how they view things. But I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle. So it's crazy though. I think, dude, like 2 days from now, we're going to have to do another one of these, because I bet more stuff breaks. And then once the player lists start to come out and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of other stuff that, like, somebody said this pod seems very pro MLP. Interesting. Does it? Do I seem like I'm coming off pro MLP?
No, I think that you're coming off as very neutral. I think that it just depends on where we end up. Right?
It's interesting to see who comes out of the woodworks to support one side or the other.
Yeah, for sure.
But, like, even unless you, I mean, even if you're Tom Dundon or Connor Pardo or you're Steve Kuhn, you still only have your side. There's nobody in the midst of all this who knows everything. Yeah. Right? Who has every single detail.
Yeah.
So even if somebody seems in the know, they still have to sort of formulate their own opinions based on the limited set of facts that they have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. There's no like one source of truth in all this.
The only thing that I think sucks for a lot of these players is that some of these deals are exploding deals, in the sense that they're given an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to sign.
Right. Yeah.
And then they're like, here it is, sign it, or we're moving on.
Yeah. And like back when it was like after the first MLP event, okay, MLP and PPA are working together. Everything's great. PPA players played in the first MLP. Everyone's like, wow, MLP was unbelievable. It was a home run. Then it was like New Year's Eve that year, we hear that. And I don't know if this was like actually true, but it was like at the stroke of midnight, right? People probably exaggerating. PPA starts calling and trying to sign everybody to 3-year exclusive agreements.
Yeah.
And shit hit the fan then. So MLP in my mind is like taking a page out of the PPA playbook, and they're doing the exact same thing. And unfortunately, like that's kind of what you have to do. That's the precedent that's been set. That's what you have to do if you want to get the right talent for your product.
Yeah. And what's interesting is there's little things that sway players. And I think it sways all of us. I think it's human nature. But like, if you had a poor experience at MLP, right, where, I don't know, you didn't like your ownership or you didn't like this, now you're like, yeah, I'm team PPA. Or if Connor, you know, there's a broken promise from Connor, or the PPA, you know, the players are pissed about the PPA and something that they're doing or paddle testing or whatever, then all of a sudden you're pro MLP. And it's little things like that that could sway some of these players, wildly enough. Like,
yeah,
especially when you have 2 hours to make a decision.
Yeah.
And so that's why, I don't know, I think we might, I mean, there's some people that obviously are taking their time and they're trying to think it through. And I think some players have that clout to do that. I think if Ben Johns literally said, I need a week, they're going to give him a week. They're going to give him a month.
Yeah. Yeah. And then of course. And he'll get whatever, essentially whatever deal he wants.
Exactly. But if, you know, Jillian Braverman is like, oh, let me think about it, they're going to be like, oh, on to the next.
Like, don't you think I would say like, okay, if Ben were like, you know what, I'm not signing with anybody. I'll decide what's right for me based on the offers I get. I could see the PPA or MLP offering him like 5 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
Like, I think that would be justified.
Yeah, for sure. And it wouldn't surprise me, dude, if the MLP at least called him and gave him an FU offer. They gave him the Godfather offer, right?
Yeah.
They threw out him and Annalie.
Yeah.
Call them and you throw out just some asinine, out of this world number just to see.
Yeah, right.
You have to try. You have to at least make the phone call.
Yeah. And I'm sure they did. I would be really interested to hear what those numbers looked like.
Yeah, exactly. If anybody knows, text us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think if you called him and you just threw out just some crazy, clearly the MLP's got backing right now. Clearly they got some funding.
Yeah.
And you throw out some just insane offer like that, you got to try it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know. I think we did a good job. Should we leave it at that? And
let's leave it at this. And yeah. All right.
It's all interesting. I mean, I don't know. We'll try and update everybody via Twitter, and on our blog and, you know, in the newsletter and everything. But when this much happens in this amount of time, like the only way to do it is like, we got to jump on video.
Yeah. We got to do the emergency press conference.
Also, I like the fact that I had to ditch Zane and you had to ditch Tyler, because it's like they can't say anything. So
I saw somebody the other day that was like, Zane, you really need to ditch Thomas.
Yeah, dude.
Right.
I woke up yesterday morning and some guy was just absolutely ripping me apart. I'm like, all right, good morning. Like,
yeah, I get those all the time. Trust me. Dude. I can't wear something on the pod without getting made fun of.
So this guy's like ripping me apart. I go to his Twitter profile and like in the thing, it's like it's all about like mental health, and there's like a mental health hotline. I'm like, dude, you're bullying me out of nowhere online. Your mental health like, doesn't matter. You're the problem. Like, you're why these hotlines exist.
But this is also why, like, you and I mean, you know, not to toot our own horn, but we're important, because Zane and Tyler are worthless in this situation.
Because they just can't.
They can't talk. They can't say a thing. Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah, somebody just said in like in the stream here, they were like, there's no journalists covering pickleball. It was like, there's also no journalists covering pickleball. That's the craziest part. Yeah. And then someone responds and goes, no journalists covering pickleball, says as they're watching a pickleball journalism channel. Like, what are we talking about?
That's funny. Yeah.
You're looking at it. Unfortunately,
this is it.
Yeah, this is what you got.
Hey, Sports Illustrated isn't walking through that door.
Yeah.
All right, bud. I appreciate it.
Cool.
Well, we'll keep everyone updated, and if we, you know, whatever we hear. So,
all right.
Okay.
What a world.
Yeah.
Later.
All right, bud. See ya.